can we actually see psychopathy in the brain? And to help us unpack this fascinating topic, Sherry D. Nickerson's 2014 meta-analysis of 58 brain imaging studies on psychopathy.
A lot of brains.
It's a lot. We're going to be, like, peeking directly into the minds of people who often, kind of seem to defy our understanding of human behavior.
Yeah, and it's really fascinating stuff. I mean, Nickerson looked at all these studies that compared, brain imaging for individuals who had been diagnosed with psychopathy compared to control groups.
Right.
And what they found, this was consistent across 56 of the 58 studies.
Wow.
Was that there were significant differences in both the activity levels and even like the physical structures of certain brain regions.
56 out of 58, that's statistically, that's huge.
It's huge, yeah.
So that seems to really point towards a biological basis for psychopathy, right?
Yeah, it really does. And one of the areas where they found the most difference was the prefrontal cortex, often called the CEO of the brain.
Right.
And that's where we regulate our emotions, where we make decisions, control our impulses, all that kind of good stuff. And they found that in individuals with psychopathy, the PFC is often less active.
So imagine the PFC is like that little voice in your head that's telling you to, like, maybe don't do that.
Right, yeah.
Or think twice.
Like pump the brakes.
Yeah, pump the brakes, exactly. What happens when that voice is, like, turned way, way down?
It's almost like having a car with faulty brakes.
Okay.
Like, you might understand the rules of the road.
Right.
But when you need to stop, you just can't stop.
Right.
And so this can manifest in all those impulsive actions, the lack of remorse, the difficulty forming those genuine bonds that we see in psychopathy a lot.
Yeah, it's just like go, go, go.
Yeah.
So it's not even necessarily about not knowing right from wrong. It's like the impulse control is just not there.
Exactly. In the same way. Yeah. Now the PFC, that's not the only area of the brain that they looked at, right? What else?
No, they found big differences in the amygdala, too. That's your kind of emotional processing center of the brain, and particularly when it comes to, like, fear and threats.
Right. That's like our fight or flight.
That's it.
So how does that work differently?
Well, okay, so imagine, like, you're walking down a dark street.
Okay.
And all of a sudden you hear, like, footsteps behind you.
Yeah.
Your amygdala is going to light up like a Christmas tree.
Right.
You're going to get that surge of adrenaline.
Yeah.
And you're going to be ready to either run or fight. But in individuals with psychopathy, the amygdala often shows reduced activity. It's like they have a dimmer switch on that fear response. So it's not that they don't understand that something could be dangerous.
Right.
It's that their brain isn't reacting the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's got to have a huge impact then on their decision making.
Absolutely, yeah.
Especially in those, like, high stakes situations.
For sure. Yeah, because if your brain isn't sending you those signals, like, hey, this is dangerous, this is bad, don't do this.
Right.
You're less likely to, like, be deterred by those possible consequences.
Which, I mean, that could explain then why psychopaths often seem to engage in risky behavior.
Right.
Maybe they don't really respond to that, like, threat of punishment in the same way.
Exactly.
Because it's like their internal alarm system isn't really working.
Yeah, it's not calibrated the same way.
That's wild. And so this kind of ties into something else then that Nickerson found, is the hippocampus. And that's the part of the brain that's responsible for learning and memory.
Yes.
So how does that play into all of this?
Well, it's the hippocampus is really important for linking our actions with their consequences.
Okay.
So if the amygdala is like the alarm system, the hippocampus is like the record keeper.
Okay.
It's noting what happens.
Right.
Okay, when I did this, this happened.
Right.
And they found that psychopaths often have structural differences in their hippocampus.
Huh.
And this could be affecting their ability to learn from their mistakes.
So even if, like, intellectually they get it.
Right.
If I do this, then this is going to happen.
Yeah.
Their brain's not taking that in.
Yeah, it's like their internal GPS is a little bit faulty.
Yeah.
Like, it can get you maybe, like, the general location.
Right.
But it's not going to get you to the exact address.
Just telling you to turn left into a lake.
Exactly.
And then, on top of all of that, Nickerson also looked at the left temporal lobe.
Yes.
What's so important about that?
Well, that's a really important area for understanding language.
Okay.
But specifically, the emotional weight behind the words that we're using.
Okay, so not just knowing what the word means, but, like, the feeling.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and what did they find there?
So several studies have suggested that in psychopaths, the left temporal lobe might not be processing these emotional nuances in language as well.
So they could say the word love,
Right.
but like not really get it.
Yeah, it's like there's this disconnect between the word and the actual feeling.
It's fascinating because, I mean, now we're talking about all these different areas of the brain.
Yeah.
And Nickerson, she was really focusing on some of the more recent studies that use that really advanced neuroimaging technology, right?
You're right, she was. A lot of the earlier research on psychopathy, like the stuff on the amygdala, that was all done before 2008.
Okay.
And I mean, imaging techniques have just gotten so much better since then, giving us a much clearer picture of what's really going on in there.
So did these newer studies then back up what they were seeing before?
They did.
Like, what about the prefrontal cortex?
Yeah, they found, even with the new technology, reduced activity in the PFC in individuals with psychopathy.
So it's like all signs are pointing to the PFC as being a really key factor here.
Yeah.
For sure. But I gotta say, like, this is where things get kind of ethically sticky for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because if these brain differences are, like, so fundamental, then, like, how does that change our understanding of responsibility? If someone's brain isn't working quite right, can we really hold them accountable for their actions in the same way?
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
It really throws a wrench in our whole, legal system.
Right.
And our understanding of free will and all of that.
Totally. Because if someone's brain is essentially, like, wired for them to behave in a certain way, how much control do they really have?
Mm-hmm. And that has huge implications when we think about things like, treatment and rehabilitation.
Yeah, because, like, if the traditional methods of, like, therapy are all about, willpower and, like, making conscious choices, but then we're saying, like, oh, but those tools are broken. So it's like telling someone with a broken leg, just run faster.
Exactly.
But, okay, before we go too far down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier those 2 outlier studies.
Oh, yes.
The ones that kind of bucks the trend.
Yes. Yeah.
What was going on with those?
Well, one of them, the participants in this study also had dementia.
Okay, so that's tricky because if you're dealing with, like, multiple...
Right, it muddies the waters.
It's like trying to bake 2 different cakes in the same pan.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then be like, which ingredient is from which cake?
Yeah, is this chocolate from the vanilla cake?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what about the other study?
With that one, there wasn't really a clear explanation.
So sometimes science just throws us a curveball.
All the time.
It's like, we don't know, figure it out.
Exactly. More research is needed.
Right. Always. But speaking of the things we often get wrong, let's talk about that whole idea of, like, psychopaths being criminal masterminds.
Oh, yeah.
It's like every movie, every TV show.
Right. They're always like, the evil genius.
Exactly. But didn't Nickerson actually push back against that a little bit?
They did. I mean, it's true that some individuals with psychopathy, they engage in criminal behavior.
Sure.
But it's important to remember that not all psychopaths are criminals.
Right.
And not all criminals are psychopaths.
It's like that Venn diagram.
Yes.
Where they only, like, slightly overlap.
Exactly. Yeah.
And actually, Nickerson, they didn't even really focus on criminal behavior. They were looking more at, like, antisocial behavior.
Right. Which is much broader.
Okay, so break that down for me.
So we're talking about a pattern of disregard for and violation of, like, other people's rights.
Okay.
And that could look like a lot of different things.
So it's like stuff that's maybe not illegal.
Right.
But still, like, not cool.
Exactly.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Okay, so like manipulation, deceitfulness, impulsivity, maybe disregard for social norms, a lack of remorse.
So basically, like, not being a good person.
Pretty much.
But, like, maybe not, like, behind bars.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which, I mean, you see that everywhere.
Oh,
it's not just, like, in a prison.
All walks of life.
Right. Could be your boss, could be...
your coworker.
Right. So it's like, okay, this is way more complicated.
Yeah, you can't just be like, oh, they're a psychopath and, like, write them off.
Exactly. Psychopathy exists on a spectrum.
1 or 2%.
It's not just this black and white thing.
It's like you wouldn't judge a book by its cover.
Ooh. I like that.
So you can't just...
It's true. Some books have really pretty covers.
Yeah.
And they're terrible.
They're awful.
And some have really boring covers.
And they're amazing.
And they're fantastic. So you could have people who are, like, high in certain psychopathic traits.
Yeah.
But would never, like, commit a crime.
Exactly. Right.
Right. And maybe they're even, like, really successful.
Yeah. I mean, think about, like, some of those, like, high-powered CEOs.
Right.
Or, those lawyers who, like, will do whatever it takes to win.
Not that all CEOs and lawyers,
Right, not it.
but it's just like it illustrates that, you know?
Yeah, those traits can be there
Right.
without necessarily leading to criminal behavior.
So got to be careful about those generalizations.
Absolutely, yeah. Because when we start generalizing and stereotyping, then we miss all the nuance.
Right, and we miss the science.
Exactly.
It really shows you that there's so much more to psychopathy than just like the surface level stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not that they're just like born evil.
Right.
It's that their brain actually processes information.
It's like they're playing the game of life,
Yeah,
but on a different setting.
yeah, with like a different controller or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But this brings us back to like the big question.
Okay.
If it is about like actual physical differences in the brain, how do we even begin to approach treatment?
Yeah,
That seems really tricky.
it is. It's a huge challenge,
Yeah.
but it also could be like this huge opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Because if we can, understand what's going on in those specific brain circuits,
Right.
maybe we can find a way to target those.
So not just trying to like change behavior through therapy, but
Right.
actually like almost
Like, what if you could go in and like
rewire it.
rewire it? Yeah. Like, we know the amygdala, for example, isn't always reacting the way it should.
Right.
So maybe there's a way to kind of boost that sensitivity or, help the hippocampus make those connections.
It's like instead of just going around the problem,
Yeah.
you're like going straight to the source.
Exactly. Which is, it's a whole new frontier.
It is. It's kind of like scary too, right?
Oh, yeah. There are tons of ethical questions there.
Because now we're talking about like actually messing with someone's brain.
Yeah, we're talking about potentially like changing who they are.
It's like, whoa, hold on a second.
We need to be really careful here.
Yeah, I need some rules.
We do, absolutely. But at the same time, if
Yeah.
it could, help people live better lives,
Right. Maybe it's worth exploring.
yeah, it's a conversation we need to have.
For sure. And it's interesting because like the more we learn about the brain,
Yeah.
the more these like ethical questions pop up.
It's like every answer leads to like 10 more questions.
Exactly. But okay, so for our listeners who are like, my mind is blown right now.
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway here?
I think the biggest thing is we're starting to see that psychopathy, it really might have a biological basis.
Like we can actually see it.
We can see it in the brain.
Yeah.
Especially those areas we talked about, like the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, hippocampus, and even the left temporal lobe.
It's like we're getting this like inside look at how their brain works.
Yeah, we're really starting to understand that this isn't just them making bad choices.
Right.
It's how their brain is wired.
But it's not like that simple. Our environment, that shapes us too, right?
Yeah. Our experiences, the people around us, all of that plays a role.
So it's like this recipe.
Yeah, it's a mix.
And like maybe the ingredients are a little different for everyone.
Exactly. And I think the most important thing is that we approach all this with like a sense of curiosity,
Okay.
but also like caution.
Right.
Because, this is powerful information.
Yeah, we got to be responsible with it.
It's not about labeling people.
Right.
It's about understanding them.
Yeah. It's about like having a more compassionate view of mental health.
Exactly. For everyone involved.
Well, folks, we've done it again. We have gone on another deep dive.
Another one.
We explored some fascinating research and we asked some really, really big questions. Until next time, keep those brains firing.